Well, good afternoon and welcome to H360 Live. My name is Dave Duplay and I'm joined here in the studio by my friend and colleague from Healthy h360, Miss Courtland Long. Well, Courtland, how are you today?
I'm well, Dave. How are you?
I am doing great. You probably noticed that I'm not in my normal costume.
I did take a little notice of that.
Yes, well, that is because we have a great show coming up today. We have Bob and Linda Carey coming into the studio, and we're going to be talking about all about a project called the Tutu Project, which is fantastic. And Courtland, I have to tell you, I know a lot about Tutu.
Do you know a lot about Tutu?
I do. I probably haven't shared this with you, so please don't let this one out of the bag.
Okay.
But my first experience with Tutu was when I was in college.
Okay.
This is a true story. I graduated from Southwestern Oklahoma State with a 2.2 in business administration. And so that was my first experience with the Tutu. The good news is I graduated. The bad news, it was on a 7-point scale, so mom and dad weren't exactly happy. Then I had my second child, Elizabeth, and she loved playing dress up. And I found myself all the time with her and her little girlfriends having tea and getting in tutus and just kind of doing the whole thing. And and here I am today on the set of H360 Live in none other than my pink tutu, and I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so happy to have Bob and Linda here with us. Courtland, I don't know what else to say, but this sure does feel good.
Well, I'm glad you're having a good time.
I am having a great time.
Well, we'll just jump right in. Bob, Linda, thank you so much for joining us today on H360 Live. We're thrilled to learn more about the Tutu Project, why Dave is dressed in this outfit, and your personal journey with breast cancer.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Can we start off with a little bit of your history, your relationship with each other and how the Tutu Project came to be?
Well, you want to start with the photography aspect?
Well, Linda and I have been married 29 years
A long
now.
time.
A long time. Really long time. And I've been a photographer for about 30 years. Commercial photographer, commercial and advertising, and I also do for myself, as I've been photographing myself for about 24 years now. And I started doing that as kind of something that was after my mom's death, and I started doing that as a form of self-therapy. And it started out by just doing black and white portraits of my head. And I would transform myself into things like I would hang myself upside down, photograph my head, and my face was kind of bigger than it is now, so it would like hang differently and with gravity. And so it was a form of transformation. And then in 2003, I was given an assignment by Ballet Arizona, which is a ballet company in Phoenix, and that's where I had grown up. And it was to give my interpretation of ballet. And since the only thing I could think of was to photograph myself as a ballerina, so I had my stepmother make a tutu. I put it on and did the photographs, and I made it pink because it could hold a tone in black and white. It wasn't because of breast cancer at all. I had no idea that that would even be happening in the future. So 8 months later, Linda and I, we moved to New York after planning for about 4 years, but we packed everything up after a life in Arizona and a career in Arizona. And we moved to Greenpoint, Brooklyn 14 years ago. And I did my first photograph in Santa Fe, New Mexico, with it in front of my friend's barn on the way there. And I didn't really know what it all meant at the time. I was still in my socks, and I kind of thought, wow, the socks would help me protect my feet from the stickers, which is like, just doesn't happen. And so we got to New York. New York was way different when you're living there than when you're visiting, So I made that photograph, didn't know what it meant, started dealing with living in New York and getting set up in New York, and I started making the pictures again, and I picked Coney Island because I knew that that would be an easy place to go and wear a tutu without too much trouble.
Yeah.
And so, just doing that to just keep photographing. In December, the end of December, Linda was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that's usually when I go into my self-therapy mode. And I put myself out there. Not only were dealing with moving to this huge city, I was dealing with this news. And I only knew that that kind of news, the outcome of my mom. And so I started making these photographs. And during her recovery, she's just like, basically go away. And
Well,
so-
I felt that, I think caregivers get stepped out, or get not ignored, but missed, because it's always about the patient who has cancer. But I think that caregivers really need to break also, and that's when I would just say, okay, Bob, you know what? It wasn't that he was getting cranky, but I could just tell that the tension was building up. It's like, just get in the car, take your tutu, as funny as that sounds, take your tutu and just go on a road trip.
Yeah,
And then make sure you email
We have
pictures.
a member, Yulati, she says the same thing, that being the patient, as odd as it sounds, being the cancer patient is easy, because you're fighting and you're doing something about it, but the caregiver and your friends and your family unfortunately have to watch you do it. They can't take it on for you, and so she has the same message.
I think it's easy to forget that.
Yeah.
So Linda, tell us a little bit about your diagnosis. You go in and did you know something wasn't quite right, or was it just a routine check and all of a sudden you find you have breast cancer?
No, I found a lump in my breast, and I didn't really think too much of it because I had had a cyst probably 3 years prior to that removed. And I just remember telling Bob his grandfather had just passed away, and he was going to the funeral in Oklahoma. I said, it's okay, you don't have to come back, I'll be fine. They're probably just going to say, come back in 2 weeks and we'll remove it. Well, that wasn't the case. And I remember I was on 8th Avenue and 15th Street, and I looked down 15th Street, and there it was, St. Vincent's Comprehensive Cancer Center. And I thought, maybe I should have brought someone with me. It was crazy day, and I learned that I had breast cancer.
So Bob, I gotta ask you one thing, you hit on something. So you had your stepmother, you went to her and said, would you make me a tutu? What was that reaction? Did she kind of look and say,
she knew.
what is Bob doing?
She knew who I was.
Yeah.
And she loved to sew. So she helped out and did it.
Awesome.
Well, Linda, back to your journey with breast cancer, you, I think, beat breast cancer for the first time in 2003, and it came back again in 2006. Is that correct? What was your reaction to that?
Well, I had 18 months of treatment initially, and you walk out that cancer center and it's like, okay, phew. Okay, I got through that, that's cool. 18 months later, and I have never had any symptoms. I don't know, it's just something, I guess I'm in tune with my body perhaps. But I did call my doctor 2 months before I needed to have my tumor markers, and I said, I think you need to test me. And she said, well, you're having symptoms. I said, no, I'm not. But she tested me, and the test came back positive that it moved to my liver. Mm-hmm. And that was a rather freaky moment.
Yeah. So you have a hashtag, Dare to Tutu, right? So for everybody out there watching the show, hashtag Dare the number 2, followed by tutu hashtag. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what you think about the tutu. We want to hear what you think about some of the pictures that Bob takes. Fantastic stuff. So Bob, now you transition to, you've got the pink tutu, Linda's diagnosis, and you begin to start taking pictures and sending them, if I'm correct, to Linda as she's going through treatment.
Well, when I was out of town, because when she was diagnosed, I didn't have very much work in New York, and we had a certain amount of money that we sold our house, and that was kind of running out. So I thank God I had the support of my family and my clients in Phoenix, and I let them know, you know, I'm available to come back to shoot. And I had support from a family member that was a pilot that helped me out with some buddy passes. And I flew back to Phoenix every month. And I was working just like, and I had support from friends with their studios that would just let me use their studios. And so when I would go there, you know, at night or like my days off, I would go to the desert. I would go up north and I would start making pictures and I would send them back to Linda, and I think it helped.
Yeah.
You know.
So finding the humor in a situation, especially something so grave as a cancer diagnosis, it can really be hard to have a laugh during that time. You know, as you said, sending Bob out in the tutu was kind of an opportunity to get some release for you, but also to have some humor for yourself. Was humor always kind of a coping mechanism for both of you?
I think it has been. I think that we've always laughed a lot. I know for me that, I mean, I can laugh or you can cry, and I choose to laugh. It just loosens things up a bit.
Yeah.
I think though that at the time it wasn't really about humor. It was about just a release and about something that was mindless. And for me, work wasn't mindless, but it was a focus. Keeping me, you know, it's just like going to a movie or concentrating on something. Like when I'm doing this stuff, there's risks involved, you know, like falling off a cliff or the police coming or getting hit by a car or getting beat up by somebody that doesn't approve, or, you know, and it was one of those things. It was like some people have motorcycles, some people hike. I photograph myself, and that takes away. And I think that when Linda was re-diagnosed, that we both really came to the kind of aha moment of when she started showing these photographs to her friends that were receiving the chemotherapy. She would always bring her the images on her phone, or she had her laptop, and she would show them. And at that moment, showing other people that were just not in the art world, showing them that work. It was the first time that regular, like non-art people saw the work, that they were like, it helped them. It took them away. It helped them be introspective and see the happiness, but also the melancholy, and to see what they were going. Like, I've had people look at the work before and they'd say, and the work that I'd done before, they say, I just keep looking at it and I see a reflection of myself.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what we're looking at, it's the content. And I think that the humor is definitely that, and I think it was with Linda seeing that it helped her, and 2 years after she was diagnosed, my father passed away of mesothelioma. And when we got back from the funeral, I said, you know, I need to go away, and you're more than welcome to come. I mean, it was like something that I needed. But we packed up the dog, and we packed up the van, and we went for a 10-day road trip along. I mean, I think the furthest we made it to was Raleigh, North Carolina, because we were shooting all along the way. But we found Wildwood, New Jersey, which is like the funniest and most awesome place ever. And we did, I think, 4 images that day, and 3 have turned out to be iconic for this project, which one of them is me jumping by the roller coaster in Wildwood. And we did 3 images that were very important to this project in one day, and that helped Linda and I come together closer as far as, you know, the work and the determination. And we didn't really know why we were doing it at the time.
Yeah. Well, Bob, I went on the website, and I must say the pictures are beautiful, and and you're so right. I look at them, and it is a little melancholy, and I look and say, wow, I can really resonate, or I can really relate to that. How did you get started in photography?
Well, when I was in high school, started in 1975, so that kind of tells you how old I am. I was a skateboarder, and it was when they were just inventing the urethane wheel, and people were skateboarding in pools, and I was one of those. We would emulate what they were doing in Santa Monica because we were looking at Skateboarder magazine, and we were just like, they were skateboarding pools because of the drought, and we were skateboarding pools because they were skateboarding pools, but we were doing it because of the foreclosed homes. We would drive down the alleys in my dad's truck, and I'd have my friends stand up in the back of the truck, and they would look over the fences, and we would spot all the empty pools. We would have garbage cans with ropes. We would bail the pools. We would muck them out. Then we would cut filter covers in shop class. We'd go back the next day, and when it was all dry, we'd start skateboarding them until the police came. And sometimes the police would come in within an hour, but we would work 3 days to skate 1 hour. So in 1979, at that point they had private skate parks where you had to be a member, and they were amazing. And I was skateboarding one day, and I think I was skating for like 4 hours. I was skating in a half pipe, and I fell on my elbow and broke my shoulder, and it was like a week and a half in the hospital. My dad picked me up, and he said, "You have $300 in the bank. Let's go buy a camera. You always mentioned you like photography." And it was just to keep me from skating. They always had a plan. And so I took a class at a community college, and I was taking pictures of my skater friends. I processed my first roll of film, and I'm looking at the negatives that didn't mean much to me, but then when I saw the first print come up in the developer, I knew that day that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And it was magic to me. It was so magic to see that chemical reaction. And it actually something that I pointed something at and recorded a moment in time. To me, that was magic. And that is, I still see it as magic. It's just a different tool, but there's nothing like being in the darkroom for me.
That is incredible. Well, Linda, I want to go back to sharing the photos with some of the other people who were going through treatment with you. Bob mentioned that it really helped them, and they found a bunch of humor in it. But can you share what some of their reactions were? What would they say to you when you would show them these photos?
What would they say? Well, they would laugh, and I think they were very interested that I was married to this guy that would go out in the tutu in the public. But I think one of the key pieces is they saw isolation. And I think cancer can do that. I think it can really isolate you from someone who hasn't experienced it. So there was that. And then just the fun part of it. I mean, you're in chemotherapy. It's at least 4 to 5 hours. It gets really boring, particularly if you can't fall asleep. So it was a little bit of entertainment. And I think also they were intrigued by the locations as well.
Yeah, some of the locations are really incredible.
So more pictures come, you're sending pictures back, and then all of a sudden this thing really starts to take off. And what's going through your mind, then you're looking at these and you've got some pictures, and how did the whole project come together? Was there an aha moment that you said, we can really help a lot of people by doing this?
Well, the aha moment was when Linda went to the center and came back, and I tend to embellish things when she tells me, like no matter what. But
I don't believe that for a minute, Bob. Trust me.
But she, yeah, well, she told me about some of the women and what people, and also witnessing what Linda went through and we both went through as a couple. the aha moment was when she told me about something that we didn't feel that was fair to cancer patients, which was, and I'll try to get this right, but she told me about a woman that had to bring her child to chemotherapy. And we kind of understood that a lot of people can't afford childcare, or they can't find childcare. So they were, I think it was a 6-year-old child approximately. And for them to be in this environment, to see that happening, it's like, and plus the stress on the mom being given this stuff that is not happy. I mean, you shouldn't be sad, but it's like, I don't think it's, to see your mom go through this at that age. So, and then she told me somebody about not getting a ride. And, I made it that this woman was throwing up for 4 hours on the sidewalk and she should have had a ride and all this stuff. But it's like, there are things that people should be given, that they shouldn't have to suffer with worrying about, their bodies changing, they're losing their hair, their body's changing, and it's not really good, it's not fun. And so why do they have to wait for a ride? And so we decided, or I kind of threw out the idea, you know what, let's publish a book, and then the proceeds of the book will go to help women, and then you'll start a foundation or whatever, I didn't say it like that, but we'll start a foundation, but it ends up
No, I
being
think
Linda.
the first part was correct.
Yeah, well, of course, now that I think about it, but and then we'll, so that's when that was like 2006, middle of 2006, and then we started looking for somebody to publish the book. And when 2008 came around, the economy was horrible. We kind of had somebody that was interested, but the economy kind of was tanking, and then that fell through. So we decided, I think it was in 2011, after being turned down and having an agent shopping this, that we were turned down by every publisher in the country. And we knew the story, but it wasn't really, it was always developing, And so I said, you know what, I've got these images, they're sitting on hard drives, dying, and we need to do something about that. And actually I had a friend in Phoenix that said, you need to do something with this. And so we decided to, through a sponsorship program we did with a fine art show that I had done 10 years before, we sold prints at a discounted rate to raise enough money to have that show. But why can't we do that now?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what we did. We sold prints, and I spoke at a class at International Center for Photography and presented the idea to the class, and one of the students came up to me and he said, when you're ready to launch this program, this project, let me know. I'm a producer at the Today Show, and I will show it to my senior producers. My wife had breast cancer, and if we get to do this, I'll make it the best piece I've ever done. And once we launched it to 1,300 emails I had on Facebook, say what we wanted to do. That was, somebody sent that project, the idea, into the Daily News, New York Daily News. They picked it up that day. 2 hours after it came out, we were interviewed by Yahoo. Yahoo put it on their homepage. Things exploded. We were up for the next 24 hours answering emails. And that's when it exploded. And a month later, we were going to do the Today Show thing when the book came out. But I called my friend, and he's like, we got to do it like in the next month before the wave crests.
Yeah.
And we did it, and we raised 2/3 of the amount of money we needed in 12 hours after the Today Show.
Well, Courtland, part one of this episode was really inspirational, and having Bob and Linda in the studio to share the story about the Tutu Project and hear Linda's story of her journey with cancer was so inspirational.
You know, both of them were so brave to come on, and Linda, she's going to be battling cancer, I think, for the rest of her life, and Bob, it was incredible to hear about his use of the tutu and these photos as a form of therapy for himself.
Yeah, and I have to admit, having that tutu on during the show, it was really inspirational and made me feel like I was part of the whole project. So you got to check out part 2 coming up next week. Courtland, there's a lot of good information and a lot of important ideas we're going to discuss for everybody at home.
We're also going to be talking about their hashtag campaign, hashtag Dare to Tutu. So you want to be sure to check out that and also submit your own photos of a tutu.
Absolutely. Well, check us out next week for part 2 with Bob and Linda. I want to thank you for joining us today, and I want to thank our sponsors for making this all possible. Remember, all of our episodes can be viewed on demand at healthyo360.com. Our podcast is always found in the iTunes store.
Well, we love social media, and we're all over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest using our hashtag RealStories when posting, and we'd greatly appreciate it if you would do the same. On behalf of Dave Duplay, myself, and the entire Healthyo360 family, we'd like to thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again for part 2 next week.
I never had